Ever stumble across a phrase in English that just doesn't make literal sense, but everyone seems to get it?
Yeah, those little linguistic puzzles.
Exactly. We're diving headfirst into the fascinating world of idioms today, those culturally ingrained expressions. They can be really colorful, but also, well, baffling, especially if English isn't your first language.
That's right. They're packed with history and shared understanding. And today, we've got a really rich set of sources to help us sort of crack the code.
Absolutely. Our deep dive draws on insights from Red Pencil. They help decode common, sometimes confusing idioms. We've also got Wikipedia for definitions, the broader context.
Uh-huh. And the Henry Ford blog gives us a peek into the historical roots of some phrases, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and ELSA Speak focuses on more modern idioms, especially around tech and innovation. Plus, we'll touch on slang with Shorelight, look at proverbs via the BBC, and even consider idioms in the business world.
So our goal isn't just defining these things. We want to understand, why they exist, where they came from, how they're different from slang or proverbs.
Right. And ultimately give you, the listener, a richer appreciation for all those layers of meaning in English.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly are we talking about when we say idiom?
Well, simply put, an idiom is a common phrase where the meaning isn't obvious just from the individual words. It has a figurative meaning.
Ah, so it relies on cultural understanding.
Precisely. You can't just look up each word in the dictionary and, piece together what it's supposed to mean. The combined phrase has its own special definition.
Can you give us a clear example of that disconnect between literal and figurative?
Sure, take kick the bucket, literally while you're kicking a pail.
Right.
But idiomatically, as Wikipedia points out, it's a very well-known way to say to die.
And it's specific, isn't it? You mentioned even small changes break it.
Absolutely spot on. Change it just slightly, say kick a bucket, and poof, the idiomatic meaning is gone. It's just about, hitting a bucket with your foot.
Wow. It really shows how these exact combinations take on a life of their own. And Wikipedia also helps differentiate idioms from other figures of speech, right? Like metaphors.
Yeah, exactly. So a metaphor implies a comparison, like calling someone a man of steel. You're suggesting strength without literally saying he's made of metal.
Okay. And similes.
Similes make the comparison explicit using like or as, faster than a speeding bullet. Hyperbole is just exaggeration for effect, more powerful than a locomotive.
And proverbs. We'll get more into those later, I think.
We will. But briefly, they're usually short, wise sayings expressing common sense. Idioms are distinct because their meaning is often completely unrelated to the literal words.
Now, one thing that really jumped out from the Decoding Idioms article was just how, well, strange some really common phrases sound if you stop and think about them literally.
Oh, definitely. Things like drop the ball or cut corners.
Or bite off more than you can chew. Try picturing those literally in a business meeting. It's quite funny.
It really is. And it makes you wonder, where on earth did these peculiar expressions come from?
And that's where the Henry Ford blog comes in, digging into some of those backstories, like fly by the seat of your pants.
Yeah, that was fascinating. It links directly to early aviation. Before they had reliable instruments, pilots literally had to feel the plane's movement and rely on instinct.
So they were actually feeling it through the seat.
Pretty much. It wasn't a figure of speech back then. It was just how they flew sometimes. A necessity.
That makes so much more sense. Okay, what about the time is ripe? That one feels a bit more intuitive.
It does, but the agricultural roots are quite interesting. Think about fruit peak ripeness is the perfect moment to pick it.
Ah, wait too long and it spoils.
Exactly. The blog actually connects this to a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., "The time is always ripe to do right." It underlines that idea of a crucial moment you shouldn't miss.
Wow, that adds depth to such a common phrase. Okay, burning the midnight oil. I always just pictured someone literally, setting lamp oil on fire for dramatic effect.
Huh. The reality is much more mundane, thankfully. Before electricity, if you worked late, you were using an oil lamp.
So you were literally burning oil late at night.
Precisely. The blog even found a poem from 1635 using that exact phrase. These idioms really do carry echoes of the past.
They also looked at handle with kid gloves. I just assumed that meant be generally careful.
Well, the specificity comes from the kid, as in a young goat. Kid skin leather makes incredibly soft, delicate gloves.
Oh, I see. So it meant handle something as carefully as you would those fine, easily damaged gloves
Exactly.
and make the grade. My first thought is always school, getting good marks.
Yeah, that's the common association now. But the blog suggests its origins are probably in the railway industry.
Railways. How so?
It referred to whether powerful steam locomotives could actually climb steep inclines gradients or grades.
So making the grade was about a train conquering a hill, not passing a test.
That seems to be the origin, yeah.
It's amazing how phrases detach from their original meaning. The Decoding Idioms article really leans into the absurdity of others. I mean, a pot calling the kettle black. Most kettles aren't black now.
Exactly. Historically, sure, soot from the fire would blacken both, but the literal image today, it's outdated. And what about bring it on? Bring what on?
Right, the laundry, dinner, and by the skin of my teeth, someone in that article mentioned how unsettling the idea of teeth having skin is.
Ugh, yeah. Once you picture it, it sticks with you.
Definitely. Then there's hit the books, like you're supposed to physically assault your textbooks.
Or don't have a cow.
Mm.
The mental image of someone suddenly producing livestock when stressed is just bizarre.
And the business ones. Eat your own dog food. Picturing executives munching kibble. No thanks.
It's memorable, if not appetizing.
And face the music. Why music for negative consequences? Shouldn't it be like face the silence or face the angry boss?
It shows how arbitrary some of these connections can feel. And the visual puzzle of kill two birds with one stone. The article jokes you'd need a pretty precise throw.
Right, or knock your socks off. Do they just spontaneously fly off in surprise?
Apparently so.
Yeah.
And let's call it a day. Like the article says, we're calling things that aren't days, days.
And now you're talking. The perfect deadpan response. Yes, I am currently speaking.
Love that. Or on Cloud 9. Apparently that was a real U.S. Weather Bureau classification for a specific type of big, fluffy cumulonimbus cloud.
They numbered the clouds. Seriously.
Seems like it. The specificity is almost funny. And pitch in doesn't really make sense in baseball terms.
True. And take it with a grain of salt, the power of one tiny grain to induce skepticism.
It's potent stuff, apparently. And the best thing since sliced bread, which, let's be honest, feels a bit underwhelming now with all our tech.
So true. My favorite might be the non-native speaker thinking, way to go, meant you still have a long way to go. That interpretation.
Oh, that's brilliant. Shows the potential for misunderstanding.
And what's hiss your face when you definitely don't want a description of their face?
It just highlights how much context you need. The article even mentioned an app using funny illustrations to teach idioms. Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, visual aids probably help with the ridiculousness. So, okay, we've seen they can be quirky, but what role do they actually play in communication? Are they just fluff?
Not according to the Business Idioms article. They can actually be quite important in professional settings.
Really? How so?
Well, they can help make communication smoother. You can express complex ideas quickly in a relatable way. Builds rapport, in emails, meetings, negotiations.
Okay, I can see that. But as that same article notes, that reliance on shared understanding must be a huge challenge for non-native speakers, right?
Oh, absolutely. Interpreting them correctly, using them accurately in cross-cultural situations, it's a real hurdle. And like we said before, the exact wording matters. Change it slightly and it falls apart.
The Henry Ford blog also mentioned their purpose, adding color, drama, maybe specificity when one word isn't enough.
That's a great point. They allow for more vivid, engaging communication. The blog also called idioms democratic.
Democratic.
Yeah, meaning they can't just be imposed from above. They have to catch on, resonate with enough people to gain momentum, and become widely used.
That makes sense. And their persistence, as the blog suggests, maybe points to our need for connection, shared understanding.
I think so. They're like linguistic shortcuts that signal you're part of the group, drawing on shared culture and experience.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit towards more modern language. Shorelight's article on slang helps distinguish idioms from slang. What's the main difference they point out?
Well, slang, like idioms, uses words non-literally within a cultural context. But the key difference is that slang is usually much more temporary. It changes really fast.
Ah, like fashion trends in language.
Sort of, yeah. The article notes some slang can stick around long enough to become an idiom, though. They used "what's up" as an example, started as slang. Now it's just a standard greeting in idiom.
And where's most new slang coming from these days?
According to Shorelight, in 2025, it's overwhelmingly social media. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. That's where trendy new words and phrases often pop up. and spread like wildfire.
They listed quite a few current examples, some I definitely recognize, like GRWM, get ready with me.
And IYKA, if you know, you know.
Others on their list were mid for mediocre.
Yeah, no cap or just cap for lying or telling the truth. Riz for charisma.
Situationship, that ambiguous relationship thing.
Right. It's a snapshot of current online culture, really. Now, how language adapts.
Then we have the ALSA Speak blog, looking specifically at idioms related to tech and innovation. These feel very current.
They really do. They reflect how much technology shapes our language now. Think about cutting edge for the latest tech.
Or ahead of the curve for being innovative.
Break new ground for inventing something totally new. It's interesting how tech progress inspires new figurative language.
Yeah, phrases like pushing the envelope, game changer, tech savvy, they're everywhere now.
And you get more specific tech terms becoming idiomatic, like plug and play, meaning something's easy to use.
Or blue sky thinking for really creative, out there ideas.
Digital native for someone who grew up completely immersed in digital tech.
Right. And digital footprint in the pipeline for something being developed. Digital detox, taking a break from screens.
And I like Tech Unicorn, that startup worth over $1 billion.
A mythical creature indeed.
It's evocative. They also list things like disruptive technology being in beta phase. As Ellis's Speak notes, these idioms really highlight the big social shifts driven by tech innovation.
Okay, let's pull back a bit to culture and cross-cultural communication. LSA Speak mentioned idioms signal cultural understanding, build connections, and the survey practice introduction had some relevant insights too.
Yes, they made a really important point about broadening the definition of cross-cultural research. They argue it shouldn't just be about comparing different countries, meaning we should also look at the cultural and linguistic variations within a single country. Diversity isn't just international.
Like different communities within the U.S., for example.
Exactly. They mentioned studies on U.S. Latinos, work by groups like AAPR. It's about recognizing that internal diversity, especially with globalization and tech connecting everyone.
And that has practical implications, right? Like for surveys.
Definitely. You can't just translate survey questions word for word. You have to consider cultural context, how different groups use and understand language. They even mentioned a tool, the Multicultural Insights Test, to assess knowledge about different cultural groups.
Interesting. Okay, and finally, let's just quickly circle back to Proverbs. The BBC article drew a distinction there.
Right. Proverbs are generally seen as older, anonymous sayings embodying wisdom or truth. They resonate across time.
Concise, memorable, common sense advice.
Pretty much. And apparently, they're quite popular in business because they're short and feel like established wisdom. Time is money is a classic example.
They seem timeless, but the article also included a note of caution.
Yeah, that their very simplicity can sometimes lead to oversimplification or groupthink. They shouldn't replace critical thinking.
Makes sense. A proverb isn't always the whole story.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into idioms, slang, proverbs, what's the main thing that stands out for you?
For me, it's just the sheer vibrancy of idioms. They're more than just weird phrases. They're like little time capsules holding history, reflecting current trends, constantly evolving.
Yeah. And understanding them, along with recognizing slang and the wisdom in proverbs, it really does give you a much richer, more nuanced feel for English and the cultures behind it.
Absolutely. It lets you engage more deeply, navigate conversations better, and just appreciate those subtle layers in everyday talk.
Okay, here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. Language is changing so fast, right? Especially with tech and social media. Constantly.
Yeah.
So what new idioms do you think might pop up in the next few years? And maybe more interestingly, what will those future phrases tell people down the line about our culture, our experiences right now?
That's a great question.
Yeah, maybe worth paying a bit more attention to the language around us and considering the stories hidden inside the phrases we use every day.